Hey, finance folks! This is Aidas Palubinskas, back with another episode of the EU Finance Podcast. Finance is about money. Money, money, money. But these days, money, or how we manage it, is changing. Like everything else, we're going digital. We hear about the newest fintechs that help us spend, save, invest, and whatever else we do with our money. We read about cryptocurrencies with their whales, Lambos, and crashes. Even central banks are getting in on the action with digital currencies. There's so much going on. Is it safe? Is it going to make life better? Who's protecting me? Let's talk about digital finance. My guest today is Jan Ceyssens, the head of the EU Commission's Digital Finance Unit. Hi, Jan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Aidas.
You are in charge of developing policies to drive digital change in financial services and to enable the creation of globally competitive pan-European digital financial products and services in a secure and resilient environment. Some people just call that fintech policy, tomato. Let's start with the basics. What does fintech mean? What is digital finance, and what are you and what is the Commission doing about it?
Fintech is very simply the use of technology to provide financial services, payments, bank loans, insurance, or many others. Many people do finance only via technology, only via their mobile phone or their computer. And that means, of course, also that this needs to be done in a safe and secure environment. Digital finance is still finance. That means it's still a risky business. People can lose their money. If there's a cyber attack, your account and the money on it may be gone. So it needs to be, first of all, safe. On the other hand, this is also a big opportunity in the sense that it can make people's life easier. Many people have better things to do than spending a lot of time in the queue in front of the bank or with complicated applications actually to manage their deposits or to do a payment. And in that sense, digital finance actually can help people to manage their finance easier, to do savings better, to have better financial products in a way, the products they want, which are targeted to them in a way. And so alongside of making digital finance safe, actually, we also want to make sure and encourage companies in Europe, enable them actually to provide these digital finance products and to do that not just for their country, but also across the different EU countries.
Mm-hmm. So you guys aren't only creating the context for innovation, but you're also helping people protect themselves against risks that they might. I mean, like, when we think about the internet and we think about finance, often we think about, these fraudulent emails coming in and asking us, I've got $1 billion in an account that I can give to you. So that's what the Commission is doing. It's protecting people. It's mitigating risks.
Absolutely. So we recently actually proposed, and the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers, they agreed actually on the so-called Digital Operational Resilience Act, DORA, complicated name, but a short abbreviation, which just basically says that each and every bank, each and every insurance company and others need to have basic, cyber risk mitigation measures in place. And to do exactly this, to protect people's, savings, to know what are the procedures to follow if these kind of phishing attacks are being held, and if maybe some people are giving their password, if maybe an employee gives also access details, what does the bank then need to do to indeed mitigate the risk, protect it, and in the first instance to avoid that this is happening.
Got it. I guess that's probably the difference between the European Union and other economies, is that the EU is always looking out, trying to see how it can protect the consumer, protect its citizens. That's actually a really nice thing. But speaking of risk, crypto. Anytime people think about fintech or digital finance, first thing that pops into their mind is crypto and crypto bros. And lately, cryptocurrencies have been in the news a lot because of volatility again. More recently, there was the Terra Luna crash. Should people be better protected against this? Or, I sometimes look at cryptocurrencies as just another form of gambling. I mean, should we just let people gamble or should we protect them? What do you think?
Well, I think there are two parts of that, of the response. I mean, the first one is that indeed many crypto assets are really highly risky and highly volatile instruments, and no regulation, no protection can actually help that. That is the nature of those instruments. Bitcoin, to give an example, is made not to relate to any official currency, but basically to have its own value, but also then its own fluctuations in a way. So I think that's simply what every consumer has to have in mind. And I think clear information, that's the first element, clear information on that has to be available. Then in the end, it will be up to citizens and investors to see whether they want to go for that or not. But they need to always be aware of the risks. And the European supervisory authorities have warned on that a lot of times. I think that then there's a second element, however. I mean, what we all have an interest in and what is all clear is basically that in these crypto asset markets, you cannot have market manipulation. You cannot have money laundering going on. You cannot have sanction circumvention. So we need very clear rules that even for those people who knowingly go into these markets, basically they are not falling fall of market manipulation, and they are not getting into some kind of money laundering scheme and other matters. And that's where basically we are now finalizing at the European level regulatory framework, the markets in crypto assets regulation, which would really put these markets into a comprehensive regulation to make sure that at least they are kind of fundamentally sound. They are supervised by supervisors. They are supervised by anti-money laundering authorities, etc.
Okay, so that's the European Union doing that, but crypto obviously, and the internet is obviously global. Is the European Union looking for ways to cooperate with other jurisdictions to make sure that cryptocurrencies aren't used to, as you mentioned, launder money? Or, for example, I've heard that Russia might be using cryptocurrencies to get around sanctions. I mean, is the EU working with other jurisdictions to prevent all this stuff?
Absolutely, and I think there's not a week which is going by without yet another international meeting, and we are really trying to let's say coordinate with this on this with our main international partners, the US, of course, also in Europe, the UK, Switzerland, and then Asia. And I think progress is being made. So on money laundering, standards are already agreed, so that now needs to be implemented. On financial stability matters, on stable coins, in a way, general recommendations have been agreed at global level as well. And again, we need to implement them. But I mean, I would say also there are two sides of one coin here, basically. It's important to have international standards, but what's also really important is that basically all the different jurisdictions do their homework to actually put this area into regulation and to implement them, basically. So that's what we're working on here also right now very much, and also are very keen on other jurisdictions to doing the same. The United States is right now having a huge political debate on, let's say, bringing crypto into regulation, and other jurisdictions are doing similar stuff.
Okay. When people think about crypto, they think about it as a currency, though that's arguable. But let's move to digital currency. Central banks around the world are working on developing their own digital currencies. The European Central Bank has launched a digital euro project, and you guys, the Commission, we are working on legislation for the digital euro. What is this about, and how will it make a difference? And the thing that I don't fully understand, like genuinely, is don't we already have a digital euro? I mean, I do all of my banking online, and I barely use cash anymore. Isn't the money that I'm manipulating or using online, isn't that already a digital euro?
Today, we have, of course, increasingly using electronic payments. But the basis for the confidence we have in this system is still the cash. If you do an electronic payment, this is still something which is managed by your bank, and it also there's a risk in the system in the sense that if one of the different banks participating actually fails, that then indeed the money can be lost. Now I think we have many systems to prevent this from happening. So in reality, it's not a very let's say real risk. but it is still there. And I think today the electronic system works well because people still know, well, if push comes to shove, they can also convert their money into cash, basically. Yeah. And that's what people are doing in a crisis, basically. They're running to the cash machine and they are getting cash because they realize actually that my electronic money on my bank account may not be as safe as cash, basically. And I think the question which the digital euro is looking at is basically, well, how will this work when as cash is more and more disappearing, actually, as people are using it less and less. The digital euro is not supposed to actually replace cash, so cash should always be there and should remain, but we have to see that more and more, especially young people, actually don't want to use cash anymore.
Well, I'm not young, but I don't like using cash anymore.
You are still young. And that's where the digital euro indeed comes in and says, well, I think we think that the monetary system still needs this backing, which so far has been provided by traditional cash to work. It needs to have a similar backing also in the digital sphere, basically. Not to replace the private kind of payment solutions which you're using and which work very often very fine, but to complement them and to basically be there as an anchor of stability, if you want. So that's what we're working on right now. Of course, a digital euro would be a project first and foremost of the European Central Bank, but indeed it would require a legislative underpinning, clear rules on it, and also clear rules on, for example, how will privacy be dealt with in such a context, who is looking at your data, how can we make sure that your data is protected, how do we avoid money laundering once again, and a couple of other matters. So that's indeed what we're working on to provide the framework here, so that then indeed the European Central Bank can actually issue a digital euro.
One question that I'd like to ask, you mentioned privacy, and I think that's an issue that a lot of people think about, and probably one of the issues that leads to people thinking about using cryptocurrencies is indeed privacy of if the European Union establishes a digital euro, and then the European Central Bank will know what I'm buying. They're going to know what I'm spending my money on. They're going to be able to track me. Now, obviously, the European Union is well known for its data protection and for privacy protection, probably more so than any jurisdiction in the civilized world. But you mentioned that you're working on that. Can we already look into the future and see that people are going to be protected against being tracked in the way that they spend their digital money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly one of the points on which we're working to ensure this. And this is also where, for example, a digital euro would be very different to a digital renminbi on which China is currently experimenting, where it is very clear. I mean, the data protection in China is not worth very much to the extent that it even exists. So it's very clear a digital euro can only exist if the European standards of data protection are really being upheld and implemented there. And so, yes, indeed, I think we can already say that any digital euro would really protect your data, that the ECB would not be able to track all your behavior. But how to implement this, how to actually make this reality and make the system still work, that's exactly, I think, what we're working on right now.
Okay, speaking of data protection, you and your unit and your team and the Commission have helped to spur the development of fintechs in Europe through payments legislation. That allows consumers to share their banking data with third parties or with apps to access new services. Cool, fun, great. I use that stuff myself. What's next? What's on the docket besides obviously the digital euro? What is next? What can the EU market or EU consumers, EU citizens look forward to in digital finance and fintechs?
Yeah, that has really been a big, I think, step forward also, and Europe has been taking the lead in this kind of open banking, let's say, framework, where really as a consumer you can say, well, okay, my bank has the data and information about the payments I have, but if I want to, I can use the services of another company, for example, a company which wants to provide me an overview of my finance situation, and I can allow them actually to access my data, which is held by a bank, because in the end, I'm the data subject. I do have the data sovereignty, if you want. I can decide who has access to my personal data. And that's, I think, been a big work with by the payments team here in the DG FISMA to make this reality. And it has really changed quite a bit, I think, the financial sector, and also provided new opportunities for people. So what we are looking at right now is to see We have currently this open banking in payments, but indeed, of course, the data economy is relevant for all parts of the financial sector and actually all parts of the economy. So we want to see how can this principle of the data sovereignty, of the idea that people can decide who has access to their data, how can that be made reality also in other parts of the financial sector and actually also across sectors? Because actually, if I want to take out a loan maybe to have energy, to improve the energy performance of my home, well, I mean, the bank needs to have financial data. They need to know, can I pay back the loan? But it may also depend on actually, am I really going to have a very energy efficient home so that the value of the home will go up basically? And for that, they may need also energy performance data basically. So I think what we're really also working on, what we want to achieve is actually that where consumers so want, where they want to have access to these products, actually people can use data both from the financial sector but also from other parts to indeed provide this service.
Wow, so integrating information and data not only from your financial life but from your everyday life. That sounds like a brave new world, as it were, but in the good sense, knowing that the EU is still out there looking to mitigate our risks and to protect us.
Yeah, it's well, whether it's a brave new world or not, that depends on how you see it. I mean, I think also a couple of people don't really trust the system yet, and I mean, I think that's also something we need to work on there. Basically, you really need to know that well, your data is only used if and for the purposes where you give your consent. Basically, if you say my data on my energy performance can be used by the bank to assess my loan, then they can use it. If you say no, they cannot look at it, they cannot use it, then they will not use it. Basically, I think that's also what's very important here is in a way to have this interoperability between different parts of the economy, but also to have this trust for people basically to make sure that really data is only used when I agree or I actually consent to give my consent for it to be used.
Sounds good. That's actually reassuring to know that the EU is indeed looking out for us and making sure that our data isn't abused. Jan, thank you so much for joining me today and for chatting about fintechs, about digital finance. I look forward to seeing what comes out of the Commission in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There's certainly more to digital finance than meets the eye. Not surprisingly, I'm the finance guy in my family. I'm the one that does the banking, starts the conversations about financial planning, investments, etc. And of course, I'm using the computer and the phone to manage it all. I do digital finance. Do I worry about how safe it is? Yeah. Am I careful about protecting my data? Yeah. My main takeaway from this conversation with Jan is that the EU Commission is really concentrating on the protection aspect of digital finance, protecting me and my data and making sure that I'm able to control who gets to use my data. It's comforting to know that the EU is working on digital finance policy that's going to put us in control. It's all about consent. That's it for this time. Thanks for listening, liking, and subscribing. Spread the word. Until next time, bye.